As Gaza ceasefire hangs in the balance, the occupation army continues its attacks, killing civilians and deepening an already catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Palestinian officials say Israel has committed 47 violations of the truce since it came into effect in early October, killing dozens and wounding more than 100. Meanwhile, Israel refuses to reopen the Rafah crossing, cutting off desperately needed aid. Hamas accuses Netanyahu of using flimsy pretexts to derail the ceasefire and block the next phase of the deal. And the movement says it does not seek to govern Gaza, but calls for a community support committee to manage daily affairs until a national consensus is reached. And as the UN warns of 70,000 tons of unexploded ordnance scattered across the enclave, Gaza faces a slow and dangerous recovery, while Washington prepares for a visit by the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance to Israel to monitor the implementation of the agreement. Will the ceasefire survive Israel's violations? And can Gaza actually rebuild under siege and rubble? And what political shape will the Strip take in the next phase? And I'm Salma El-Fiki, and welcome to In Depth. The Guardian reported that Israeli warplanes launched airstrikes on Rafah, marking the most serious threat yet to Gaza's week-long ceasefire. And the Israeli occupation military said the attack followed Hamas fire on its troops, while Hamas insisted it remains committed to the truce and accused Israel of repeated violations. Gaza's media office said Israel has breached the ceasefire 47 times, killing 38 Palestinians since it took effect. The deal, brokered under the U.S. mediation and endorsed by Donald Trump, aimed to end nearly 2 years of war through the release of all Israeli detainees and about 2,000 Palestinian detainees. The clashes come as the far-right Israeli ministers urge a full return to combat while Israel is still blocking aid and keeping the Rafah crossing closed. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry says the Palestinian death toll has surpassed 68,000, with thousands still buried under 60 million tons of rubble across the devastated Strip. And the Washington Post reported that humanitarian aid is finally reaching more areas of Gaza under the week-old ceasefire, but severe challenges persist. The United Nations confirmed the first entry of cooking gas in 7 months, and aid groups say clinics, bakeries, and nutrition centers are gradually reopening. Around 600 aid trucks are supposed to enter Gaza daily, yet Israeli restrictions, road destruction, and damaged warehouses continue to obstruct delivery. The Rafah crossing remains closed despite UN pressure, and Israel has threatened to limit aid over disputes about detainees' remains. The Egyptian Red Crescent has led most deliveries, sending up to 400 trucks a day, while the UNICEF and other agencies resumed water and medical operations. And still, aid groups warn that famine and displacement remain widespread, with 90% of Gaza's population uprooted and winter approaching amid shortages, damaged infrastructure, and the ever-present risk of renewed violence.
The fragile ceasefire in Gaza is unraveling as the occupation army continues to violate the agreement, killing 11 Palestinians, including women and children. Palestinian officials report 47 Israeli violations since the truce began in early October, leaving 38 dead and 143 wounded. At the Rafah crossing, Israel has extended its closure until further notice, accusing Hamas of not doing enough to return captives' bodies. This move has deepened the humanitarian crisis, with thousands of trucks loaded with food, fuel, and medical supplies stranded on the Egyptian side of the crossing. Hamas, for its part, says Israel is using flimsy pretexts to derail the truce. The movement confirmed it does not seek to control Gaza politically, urging instead the swift creation of a community support committee to manage civil affairs. Hamas spokesman stressed that existing government agencies will continue to perform their duties temporarily to avoid any administrative vacuum within the Strip. Hamas has also rejected a statement from the U.S. State Department in which it cited credible reports indicating the Palestinian group would violate the ceasefire deal with Israel by planning an attack on civilians in Gaza. Hamas said the allegations fully align with the Israeli occupation's propaganda that attempts to justify its crimes in Gaza. On the ground, the devastation remains overwhelming. Gaza Civil Defense warned that 70,000 tons of unexploded ordnance pose a grave threat to returning residents. The UN Mine Action Service says clearing this munitions will be a lengthy process. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to visit Israel on Monday as part of a push by the Trump administration for the implementation of the agreement. As civilians dig through rubble and families wait for aid, the ceasefire's fragility exposes a deeper truth. Without accountability for the occupation's crimes and a genuine path toward Palestinian self-determination, Gaza's wounds will remain open and peace will stay out of reach.
And for more analysis, we are joined from Paris by Dr. Majid Boudan, the international law professor, and from Jenin by Mr. Nauman Tawfiq El-Abed, the writer and political analyst. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining me here today. I will start off with Dr. Boudan. And, sir, despite the ceasefire, 47 Israeli violations are reported. What does this reveal about Tel Aviv's intentions and the credibility of the truce?
An agreement, a ceasefire agreement, like all agreements, must be implemented in good faith. And the fact that there is a violation or there is a partial implementation means that there is no good faith, and the non-compliance with good faith will engage the responsibility of Israel here, as well as what Hamas is doing. By taking actions which are not allowed by the ceasefire agreement. So the ceasefire agreement now is very fragile, and the international community must elaborate measures to be implemented quickly to not allow other violations of ceasefire. If not, we will see that there is only one phase which was implemented until now, and then the other aspects of the agreement will not be respected, and this catastrophe.
Yes, Mr. El-Abed, now Hamas says it does not wish to govern Gaza, and it calls for a community support committee. How feasible do you think this model is? Do you think it'll work?
Yes, first of all, this is not what Hamas is saying alone. This is what happened in the Palestinian Urgent Summit that was held in Cairo, and the Arab and Palestinian leaders agreed to it, either the Palestinian government in Ramallah or the groups in the Gaza Strip. And according to my information, lots of the European countries approved of this too, and this proposal was also told to the U.S. government. And so this proposal is, first of all, Palestinian, and then also an Arab proposal, and it can be international if they really want to end this aggression on our Palestinian people and ending the war. What we can see here is that there is a party, which is the occupation army. They don't want this war to end, and we have proof, which is they did not comply what was asked of them in the first phase. They are stalling, and hindering progress, and they are using some pretexts, even though they were the ones who started the breaches when they did not keep up or follow the list of the detainees that they released, and there are some deceased people that they have, around 50 of them. Now we have around 50 ever since the war supposedly ended. We have some aggressions and violations on the pretext that that Hamas violated the agreement. So
Yes.
what can we say about the
Okay.
aggressions that they are having
Yes.
over the past period? They also closed the Rafah crossing
Yes.
and hindered the delivery of
Aid.
some of the trucks that were supposed to go into the Gaza Strip, and they also target some places where the civilians are. And so this is not just about governing here in this plan. Actually, this plan was supposed to be implemented fully with implementation.
Let me move to Dr. Boudin. Reportedly, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to visit Israel this week as part of a push by the Trump administration for the implementation of the agreement. And I think with him is going Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Doctor, can you maybe share with us, how do you read the Trump administration strategy at this stage?
We have to, again, read and understand the position of the U.S. administration in faith. But it's up to the U.S. administration to show that it's acting in good faith. And the target was not only to free the hostages, which is a very legal and noble and legitimate target, and as well as the freeing of the Palestinian prisoners, which is also a legitimate target. The point here is to look at the agreement in its globality. The International Convention on Interpretation of Treaties, what is called the Vienna Convention, is saying very clearly that an agreement must be looked at in its entirety, in all its aspects.
Yes.
So now we are looking at maneuvers to implement one aspect and not to implement others, and this is not. It's already a breach of the agreement. So the international community, especially now the U.S., they have, and the guarantors, the countries guaranteeing this agreement, which are Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, and the European Union, must come into play here to put new measures to implement all the conditions, even if they will be implemented in stages, but to link them together, because they are linked in the agreement. So we have to make a very simple interpretation. When they have agreed that Hamas will keep the security until the peacekeeping force will be established, it doesn't mean that Hamas will govern the Gaza Strip. This is not acceptable as an interpretation. Hamas has its responsibility. Now the peacekeeping force means that there will be a new force which will be governing. And when what we have seen now, which is established facts, that people were killed in Gaza because they have been accused by Hamas that they have been betraying. This is not the way how justice should be done. Justice should be done by courts, by impartial, independent courts, and not by a political decision that this is betraying or not. This is not a good start for this, and this is why we have to be away from the emotional aspects and to see how the Palestinians will govern themselves without these authoritarian and unacceptable way of managing the governance of the trip.
Mr. Elabed, I'll be asking you the same question I just asked Dr. Majid, that J.D. Vance, and along with Witkoff and Jared Kushner, they are visiting Israel to advance the Trump administration ceasefire plan. Now, let me have your opinion as a Palestinian, from the Palestinian perspective. How do you interpret this U.S. involvement?
Yes, we were saying from the start of this aggression on our Palestinian people that if the U.S. government wanted to stop this genocide, they could do it, especially the U.S. President Donald Trump, that through his policy and his envoys could put all could pressure and had all the cards to Netanyahu and the Israeli government. And so, yes, he could stop the war. And as he said, he could restart the war again, just saying one word. And so the U.S. role is very, very important, and we support it because we know that the U.S. government is the one capable of stopping Netanyahu and stopping his but the problem here with the U.S. president and his envoys are two things. The first thing is that they follow some of the methodologies and ideologies of Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And so when they propose something about the Palestinian cause, they are listening carefully. The envoys, they are listening before they take it to U.S. President Trump. And so this is a problem here, and a very dangerous one. And the other thing when it comes to Trump's administration is that they did not hear from the Palestinian side. They were just talking and negotiating with Netanyahu's government, whereas the Palestinian voice, or the Palestinians, which are the other party here, they didn't listen to the Palestinians. They even prevented them from entering New York to attend the to the United Nations meeting, and this is a breach of law. And so this is some kind of green light for Netanyahu to do whatever he wishes when it comes to the Palestinian cause. And so when the U.S. president had a meeting with the Arab negotiators and leaders who met with him, the picture somewhat changed, but it was not enough of a change. And the U.S. administration needs to be convinced to mediate and to meet the Palestinian leaders, either with the government or other groups, to talk about peace and stopping the aggression and having a two-state solution and reaching sustainable peace and security. And so if the U.S. role is as big as we wish, they need to talk about this with the Palestinians. And also the problem with the U.S. president administration, they're talking, on a business kind of way. They're not talking about the Palestinians' rights or the self-determination rights for the Palestinians. They're talking about displacing the Palestinians, and this goes with what Netanyahu and his government proposed with settling the Palestinian cause. And so, yes, the U.S. role is very important, but this role also needs to mediate and cannot just be an ally to Netanyahu's government and his extremist ideology, that the U.S. was harmed. And the U.S. president itself was harmed by them. The region was harmed. The policies have brought them harm more than good. And so the mediators and the government and Witkoff and Kushner need to also listen to the Palestinians and the voice of reason from the Arab and Islamic leaders that also have signed the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. as we know,
Mr. Nauman, let me move to Dr. Bouden, please. And Dr. Bouden, Israel says that Rafah border crossing will stay closed until further notice. How can the international mediators and agencies respond to this deliberate humanitarian blockade despite pressure from the UN to allow more aid for the suffering population and the truce just taking effect since last week?
Under international law and under the provisions of the agreement, Israel has no right to block or to keep closed the Rafah border or any border. They must withdraw from the Rafah movement to close this point of this checkpoint and let the humanitarian aid coming in. Israel is showing here, and the government of Netanyahu particularly here, they are showing that when they have a dispute with Hamas, they are punishing the civil population, the Palestinian population. They are making starve again. So this is not acceptable under international law. And the United States and the guarantors of the agreement, they have the right now to take measures by diplomatic way or by other means to obtain from Israel to open the Rafah border. Israel cannot continue to do that, and it's a very clear violation of this agreement.
Yeah. Mr. Al-Abed, and also what is your take regarding that Israel insists that the Rafah crossing stays closed until further notice and ignoring completely all the calls from the UN to allow any aid to Gaza? How do you see this ongoing closure and what can the international actors realistically do to lift this blockade?
Yes, of course, this siege is forced on the Palestinians and Gaza for lots of years now, but it became more forceful ever since this war started on the 8th of October, and then all the corridors were closed, and then we know that Rafah was occupied, the Rafah corridor and the Salahuddin corridor, and so the Israeli occupation government took control of all these corridors. According to the international law, the occupation country needs to be delivering the aid to the civilians. They need to give them everything that they need, not just aid. They need even to protect the civilians in the event of war, but everything that they have done so far is forcing a siege, starving them, and using a systematic starvation method. We need some investigations from the UN, and the report that they released around a month ago, they said in it that there is some famine, and there are operations, ground operation, and they are not just claims, and that there is a systematic starvation method. And so in the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, it was proposed in phase 1, they proposed delivering humanitarian aid through the Rafah crossing. And so I wish for the mediators and those who signed the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement to force and push Netanyahu to comply to phase 1. Why are they talking? Why are we having or talking about Palestinian breaches and the Gaza Strip and no talk whatsoever about the Israeli government breaches not long after the agreement was signed? And then Netanyahu is starting to threaten again. And also Ben Gvir, with what he wrote on X, he said war. These are very dangerous wills, and they are not positive signs that the war will stop, and so the mediators need to live up to their role and push Netanyahu to implement this agreement. And this siege is illegal from the very start, and it was not illegal. So it is even more illegal now after the agreement. And they agreed to a specific number of trucks that need to be delivered to deliver the needs of the Palestinians, but now Netanyahu is refusing this up till now.
And my next question is also to Dr. Boudin and also Mr. Nauman, but let me start with Dr. Boudin. And on Friday, the Israeli occupation forces have fired on a vehicle, saying it crossed Gaza ceasefire line, killing 11 people, including women and children. Why do you think this blatant violation of the ceasefire has slipped under the radar with almost no global recognition or reaction? While the US is saying the second phase has actually started, even though Israel is violating the ceasefire altogether.
Well, this is a failure from the international community to not address this violation of this violation by Israel by targeting civilians. Whatever is the acts that somebody has slipped in an area, the response should not be disproportionate.
Yes.
So this is a violation.
Yep.
Violation is climbing, and we have in few weeks we have a conference on the reconstruction of Gaza. So these methods of establishing the peacekeeping force must be addressed quickly before to organize the real atmosphere and the real conditions so this reconstruction conference will succeed. And this is why it's very important. Some measures are required now. There is from the Hamas point, because we have to see that there are how we can get out of this situation. Hamas must stop these killings of Palestinians because they are retaliating on accusation. They must act in a responsible way by making whatever claim, but by deferring these people to a tribunal, independent and impartial, which will make the decision and not take the decision themselves.
Yep.
It gives an unacceptable way and gives a leverage to Netanyahu to do what he's doing in violation of international law. Second, Israel must stop these violations, and the international community must now obtain from Israel that they obey to the articles of this agreement, and to let the peacekeeping force be on the ground and to be formed. And these are very urgent matters to protect the civil population.
Yeah. And Mr. Labid, what is your take regarding the Israeli violation? What is your take regarding that, Mr. Labid? أيوة. Okay, Dr. Boudin, we're still with you. Netanyahu accuses Hamas of not doing enough to return detainees' bodies. Is this another Israeli maneuver to justify further aggression, do you think?
Well, first of all, in the agreement, the matter of we have to respect the dead people, whether they are Palestinians or Israelis, and Israel is claiming the bodies of their owns, like the Palestinians are claiming the bodies of their owns. And this must be implemented by both parties. Hamas should speed up to transfer the bodies of the Israeli people to Israel. And it must not be part of the negotiation. It should be implemented, and not to give an excuse or a leverage or pretext to Netanyahu. Also, Netanyahu should not use this to resume the starvation mechanism and the bombing of the civilian population, and to open the borders. So these matters are not acceptable, legally speaking and ethically speaking. So the other point is that Hamas must not behave like it will govern completely, totally, solely Gaza. There is a new era which is now opened, and the governance of Gaza is not decided, and Hamas must respect the civil population, the civilian population, and must let the civilian population decide on how they will choose their leadership, and this will be will be in the scope of this agreement.
Yeah.
So this must be respected.
Well, thank you so much. And that was Dr. Majid Bouden, the international law professor, and was with us Mr. Nauman Tawfiq El-Abed, the writer and political analyst. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your insights. And that brings us to the end of today's episode for In Depth. And thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for more updates on Q News.